Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria Q. Kane.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. Let's get started with the story of the week.
Every week we are presented with the most unbelievable stories, and I'm sure
It's really true. This is why we're doing this podcast, because you just can't believe that all of this stuff is real life.
no, you really can't. And I've never worked in an office building, but I'm sure anybody that's worked in an office with cubicles is really going to find this next one truly unbelievable. So, this 60-year-old woman clocks into her job at a Wells Fargo corporate office on a Friday morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, which I'm like, who's going to work that early? She seems like a superstar in general. So she goes in that early, goes right to her cubicle. The day goes on as normal, and everybody goes home for the weekend. So Monday morning comes around, and everybody comes back into work, and they notice this weird smell, but they were playing it off to faulty plumbing. So everybody again just goes on with their day and goes home. Tuesday, they find her dead at her desk.
It's just so unbelievable, right? That I mean, the average person doesn't really know what decomp smells like, but most people do know what it smells like because most people have had exposure to a piece of meat that was in the trash or just trash outside in general, or even a small animal like a squirrel or a mouse or something that died outside. The smell of decomp has a very specific smell. And I was saying this, I think, on another episode, that we were in the pool out back in the yard, and we smelled it. Ricky was actually in the pool, and I was like, I keep getting a whiff of decomp. There's something, I don't know if like the cat killed a mouse or something, but there's some little thing that's decomposing because it just has a very specific smell.
Yeah, I mean, you have to imagine. So she's there for 4 whole days. So you have to imagine on day 3 that can't smell that great, right? Like,
What part of the country was this in? Did it
it was in
say?
Arizona, so it was hot, but you have to think she's in a temperature
In an air
controlled
yeah.
building. And
Still, it doesn't matter. Like, you're there 4 days decomposing. I mean, it's better than being outside in Arizona, clearly, but I
no,
mean, you're still gonna still break down in that amount of time.
and nobody was like, I'm gonna try to track the source of the smell, and then came across her on her desk on Monday morning. So part of the problem was that they were saying a lot of employees were working remotely, so the office wasn't as full as like a normal office building would be. But the employees at the same time said this is completely unacceptable because the building has 24-hour security. I'm thinking like they don't have any alert system that's like this lady clocked in and never clocked out. And I'm not even saying for safety purposes, I'm saying for payment purposes. You're just going to let somebody run the clock for 4 days in a row?
I don't know. I worked jobs at some time of my life that I clocked in, and I probably forgot to clock out every single day of my life. Like, I think that they're probably used to people. I know you would never do that, but people with my brain do that all the time. So they're used to having employees that clock out and are just like, oh, or clock in and then, oh, they forgot to clock out. So I don't think that, I mean, I understand that that would be a way to track somebody, but like that happens all the time, I'm sure.
Yeah, and then they said her cubicle was on the 3rd floor of this building and it was off of the main aisle. So I guess nobody really had any reason to go check on her. I just find this really sad. She didn't really seem to have any family that reported her missing or anything. And it's kind of sad to think about you're at your desk all day at work and nobody even comes over to say hi to you.
Yeah. It's bad enough that you don't have family that notices that you're missing, but your job doesn't even know who you are or know that you're missing for the day. It's really sad and unfortunate.
It really is.
And they said that the company said that they were offering, just at least with the employees that were working on that floor, some kind of moral support and some counseling services maybe. But think about this. If you're just a regular person that went to work all day and was smelling a nasty smell and then found out that it was your coworker that was dead, that would be like a little emotionally traumatizing, wouldn't you think? To know that's what you were smelling.
Yeah, and how my question for you was, so how successful would they be in getting that smell out? Like, would that take a couple of days, a week? Is it immediate once they clean it?
So she was found dead at her desk, right?
Yeah.
And it appears that she died from natural causes. Probably they'll send her body to the medical examiner, do an autopsy to see what happened, but they didn't think that it was anything suspicious. Um, so it just depends how decomposed she really was. I wouldn't think it was really super super bad, just because if she was in an air conditioning building. Now, do they turn the air off on the weekends because no one's supposed to be there? That's a whole other issue.
Oh, I didn't even think
Because
about that.
yeah, because they might if I mean, air conditioning in Arizona is probably extremely high in an office building, and if you know that nobody's really gonna be there, they might turn it down a lot, you know what I mean? I don't know. But regardless, yeah, I mean, they can get the smell out. People die. I mean, nobody wants to think about this, but like people die and decompose in houses and stuff all the time. And it's funny because one time Gabe and I were looking at a house when we were buying our house, and one of the neighbors came up to us, not for our house, but one we were looking at, and they were like, he died in there. And I was like, oh, okay. And she was like, no, like his body was dead in there. She was and I was thinking like, "Okay, so I'm gonna go in right now and just kinda sniff around and see how like, what she was trying to hint at," you know what I mean? Because there's a big difference between, like, an old person dying with their family and getting picked up by the funeral home right away versus someone that was dead in their house for a week in the dead of summer, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but they pull floorboards out, they'll get it clean. There's whole entire companies, crime scene cleaners, even though it's technically not a crime, but they go and they handle this. They have all these sorts of chemicals and rip out, like I said, the carpet, the floor. They could get it done most of the time.
I think if you're buying a house that's not a completely brand new construction, it's pretty naive to not think at some point that somebody might have died in there. And it doesn't have to be a horrific murder. Like my house was built in the 50s. I know the old lady and I'm pretty sure her husband died in here too. You just
Yeah, but every time, like this is how I would be. So if I'm going back to work at that job, I would be constantly like smelling to see if I got any hint of it, because it's a very disturbing smell. I don't really know how to describe it. It doesn't quite smell like pee or poop or fish. It's kind of a combination of like just this funk, right?
yeah.
And now these people all have that permanently tattooed in their their nasal memory that this is what a dead body smells like. It's just it's gross,
I
really.
mean, honestly, I don't.
They signed up for an office job, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, if this happened to me, I feel and, like, I was there on the day of the discovery and smelled the smell and everything, I feel like I'd try to work remotely from then on or at least get moved to another floor.
You wouldn't even work there anyway, because if you had to be there at 7 o'clock in the morning, you would already not be a candidate for that job.
Seriously, I know.
Okay, celebrity news.
Okay, so we did if you listen to audio only, we did a little emergency episode last Friday about this death. So Thursday night, NHL star Johnny Gaudreau and his brother were riding bikes. They lived in Salem County, New Jersey, which is only about 40 minutes from where we live. So their sister was set to get married on Friday, and they were in their hometown just, doing family activities, celebrating this awesome occasion that was supposed to happen. So they were riding their bicycles on this road, and like most normal people that were driving a car, they were, going off to the side a little bit to give them some room to ride their bicycles. So this guy that admitted later that he was drunk driving came up behind the SUV that was in the middle of the road and illegally went to go pass on the side and smacked into both of them and killed them.
What how many times are we going to report this? I have like a particular distaste for drunk drivers. And didn't we just have a story a couple weeks ago about a similar situation where a drunk driver drove into a nail salon and killed a bunch of people, and it was some woman who had just gotten married and was getting ready to go to her friend's wedding or something
Well,
like
we
that?
had that, and then let's not forget the horrific story of the couple that had just been married and they were on a golf cart and a drunk
Oh
driver
yeah.
hit them as well. It's horrific.
Yeah, think this when you hear stories like this, you just can't even fathom how a family could ever heal from something like this. It's just so tragic on so many different levels, and to think that I mean, you recently got married, and it's like there's so much chaos surrounding the days leading up to that anyway. And just to think that something could happen right before that would just ruin, like, really ruin that moment for you. You talk about most people that say their wedding got ruined, it's like, "Oh, it rained," or something, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I mean,
this
this is it's terrible, and the parents and the sister, it's just they have another sibling too? Or
I'm
that was
not
her only siblings?
I think it was her only siblings. It's like to think about it, you're supposed to have this awesome day where you're getting married to the love of your life, and then both of your brothers are killed in one shot, and it was a totally preventable death. That has to be heartbreaking. I was even saying, like, as a mother, how do you even heal from something like
Right.
this?
I don't know. Anytime you lose a child, it just must be the most terrible thing ever. The thing is, though, is that this guy, the most fucked up part of this entire story is that this guy is like a drug and alcohol counselor. He works at a drug and alcohol rehab center.
Yeah, so the guy Sean Higgins.
It's just it's so crazy, right?
No, it really is because and it's one of those things where I wonder I'm just speculating here. I wonder if he had known issues in the past and that's what caused him to work at the rehab facility because I know a lot of people that are in recovery tend to go work as counselors or as sponsors in AA or something, you know. So I'm wondering if he
Well,
had
this definitely was not his first time.
No, it definitely wasn't. I mean, when he got pulled over, he admitted to the police that he had 5 to 6 beers before getting in the car and that he was also drinking while driving.
Yeah.
So,
He's got a serious
and
problem.
my thinking process behind it is and again, I'm just speculating, is that, you know, if you're admitting you had 5 to 6 beers, you probably had 10 or more.
Oh, yeah.
I think
And they'll be able to they're gonna do all these tests and stuff and figure it out. It doesn't matter, like, 5 to 6 is just too much anyway. And, there's all these statistics too that when a person drinks and drives and gets pulled over for it or has an accident or something like this, it's estimated that they have probably drank 80 times more than that, and this is the first time they kinda got caught doing it.
yeah.
And something you need to keep in mind, and this is just for all the listeners too, like when there's a person that's drinking and driving, there's always another person that knows that they're drinking and driving.
Yes.
When you're with someone that drinks that much, you're ignoring it if it's happening because you could smell it coming through people's pores when they drink a lot. Like if they come home and they smell like alcohol, they shouldn't have been driving. And sometimes it's the responsibility of like friends and families and loved ones around to be like, you can't do this. Not just to not hurt yourself, but to hurt other people. Because imagine being this guy's married and has at least one kitty, right? Or maybe even more children. Like, how does his wife feel right now, knowing that now he's probably going to jail? The children aren't going to have a dad. She's going to have to
Well,
raise the
he's
kids
not
as a single
probably
mom.
going to jail. He is going to jail. Like that's he's
Well,
already admitted he was
yeah,
under the
but
influence.
listen, that doesn't mean anything. You have to wait until he gets prosecuted and everything, but it's just, and imagine being the wife just of this and knowing that your husband has induced this onto another family. You know what I mean? It's terrible, but it's almost your responsibility when you have an alcoholic person around you to really speak up and try to get them help.
Well, I'm just saying in defense of her, even if she knew he had drinking problems and everything, there's really only so much control you could have over
No,
another
it's not.
adult.
I'm not trying to say it's her fault. I'm just saying that because, like, yeah, you don't have control over other people, but I think a lot of people kind of think they turned a blind eye to it. They don't think that the person that they're with has a problem, and sometimes people will go get help if you put pressure on them and you really put it in their face rather than ignoring that it happens. Because where was he drinking all these beers? He left and got in the car somewhere, like.
Yeah, I
Which
mean,
is
in fair
a whole thing, because if you're at a bar, technically, like, should you ever be leaving and driving? That's how I
No,
look at
and
it, you
if
know?
he did leave a bar, the bartender could get in trouble for over serving that person. But that information hasn't come out. Like, we don't know at this time whether he was drinking at his house and then went for a drive, or drinking at a friend's house, or he was out at a bar or a restaurant or something, so we don't know that yet. He also worked for the New Jersey National Guard, so that's not a good look either, and the rehab has said he's been placed on leave for now. I'm going to assume that he's getting fired because this is already a horrific look for
I
them.
thought that that was messed up too. I'm like, the dude works for you, and he said he was drinking. He said it to the police officers that he was drinking. Fire him. That's
Yeah.
it. Like, you already know he admitted it. It doesn't matter what happens, what comes out of this. Listen, like, the guy was in the service. I don't know if he was in war or anything. He might have PTSD and have all of these reasons for drinking, okay? But like, it's not an excuse. It's just not. Like, he could get help and do whatever he needs to do, but, like, do you think that this family gives a fuck about any of this? No. Like,
No.
I wouldn't. Sorry.
And it's so
Like,
much more layered than, the sister even getting married. The brother Matthew that got killed, his wife was expecting a baby, and I believe it was their first baby, and
yeah, it is. It's like and then the parents have lost 3 of their, or 2 of 3 of their children, and they have to deal with that, and now they have these 2 wives that are left over with grandchildren that don't have a dad anymore. It's just it's terrible.
yeah, and, this guy with Johnny who was killed was super beloved in the NHL community. He was this huge figure. He just signed this massive contract last year for $80 million for the next couple years. So, that's been this huge thing, and it's like, you have to think professionally. Him and his wife are probably like, "This is an awesome accomplishment." He'd been working his whole life to work in the
Yeah.
NHL, and then this awful tragedy occurs, and it's just horrific, and I thought it was awesome in the sports community that, like, all the baseball teams were honoring them, every, sports announcer mentioned it. As I kept reading details about it, I was getting progressively more and more sick to my stomach just thinking of, like, our family being in this situation and how absolutely horrible it is. So, the guy, Sean Higgins, that was arrested, he has a detention hearing scheduled for today, which is where they're gonna determine if he's gonna stay in jail awaiting his trial or if he's gonna be able to go home in between, which,
Yeah, he shouldn't.
yeah,
I'm
I don't
sorry.
think he
Like,
should either.
you don't get to deserve to, like, to be with your kids and everything when these guys can't be with their kids. Sorry.
Because let me point this out too. So, like, let's say he's able to go home in between the pending trial. That could be a couple years before this litigation goes through, and then, he now killed 2 people. What is to stop him from drinking and driving again, trying to dull the
Well,
pain of killing
they'll
2 other
tell,
people?
yeah, because they'll tell him not to, and he'll listen, because that's how life works, right?
I see somebody like this as a danger to society at this
Yeah,
point, so
exactly.
I don't think he should be allowed out, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, let's move on to something a little bit less depressing. Okay, Gary Coleman. Do you know who he is?
I know he was in Different Strokes, but that's pretty much the only knowledge I have of him.
Do you like? Did you ever even see Different Strokes? Was it on reruns or anything? It's kind of an older show. I feel like it was on reruns. Maybe it was on when I was a kid. I don't know, but
I don't think I ever watched an episode of it, but I watch a lot of, like, TV history documentaries and stuff, and they always talk about it, but, like, I never watched it, but, like, I'm familiar with what it is, kind of.
yeah. So for those of you who don't know, he was on this show called Different Strokes, and he was very unique in appearance because he almost had a childlike look, even though he was an adult. And the reason is because when he was a little kid, he was adopted by his parents. And when he was a kid around 2 years old, he started not feeling well. And then his parents took him to the doctor, and they found out that he was having kidney failure, and he was diagnosed with something called focal segmental glomerular sclerosis, which is, the glomeruli are a group of cells. It's a structure that's within the kidney, and that helps filter out all of the waste that is in our blood. And what happens is that these glomeruli get scarred up, and the kidney is no longer able to function. So he went on for a little while with this condition, but then when he was 5, he had to get a kidney transplant. And his mom said he got the kidney transplant and he was like jumping around 2 weeks later because that's what happens when kids get surgery, even such a serious surgery like that. So when you get a kidney transplant, you have to take drugs so your body doesn't reject it, especially when you're very young. Your immune system is awesome and it recognizes this kidney as foreign and it tries to attack it. So they give you drugs to try to make your body not reject the kidney. And it worked well for him. He had it for a very long time until he was 17 years old. But the drugs caused him two different things. One of it caused him to stunt his growth. So he only grew as a full-size adult at 4'8", which is very short, especially
Yeah.
for a man. And he also had this look of he got these really big chubby cheeks as a result of the medication too. So he just had this very cute, like boyish look but that was also part of him being an actor and very recognizable in the show and funny and everything like that. So that's a little bit of the background on him.
Yeah, so Peacock recently released a documentary. So they're kind of talking about his issues with kidneys, and they revealed that he had been living without one for 25 years or without any, right?
Yeah, so you can't live without a kidney. You can't. So if you don't have a kidney inside your body that works for you, you have to do something that's called hemodialysis and you have to go get an artificial kidney to do the work for you. So so when the kidney failed, the one that he got transplanted, he decided that he was going to get hemodialysis, which he ended up doing for 25 years of his life. But it's a commitment. You have to go get it done 3 or 4 times a week for a couple hours each time. And what happens is they hook you up to a machine and it takes the blood out of your body and cleans it or takes all of the toxins, it filters it, and then it puts the blood back into your body. And it's a lot, you know what I mean? And it's really cool though that the technology could do that because if he was born before this was available, like he would have died right after not being able to have a kidney. I don't know why they didn't decide to do another transplant. There might be a reason why they decided not to. Maybe he wasn't a candidate for it anymore, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I feel bad because they were saying in this article too about the documentary that his father was very unsympathetic to his condition and he was often really sick on set, and then his dad would be yelling at him to like get his shit together because people were depending on him when he was, suffering with this and dealing with this all the time. So that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, that's a bummer. And that this is his adopted father, I guess. And one thing I want to say about this condition is that there are different ways you can get this condition. So you can get it just like, oh, it just sporadically happens, or you could get it from being drug induced, like something could damage the kidney. But oftentimes it's also genetic. So you can get it from a family member. And sometimes when you adopt a child, and especially if you don't have any history of where they came from, it could have been passed down to him.
Yeah, I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like this would be a good dissection to do on the website because there's a lot behind the story, and then he did end up dying in 2010, so
Yeah, and he was young. He was 42 when he died, and I do wanna write about it because he ended up getting heart surgery, which I kind of would like to dive deeper into that. I don't know exactly what happened with him, but, he ended up getting pneumonia, and then he ended up having seizures and falling, and he died as a result of a fall, actually. So, it is interesting, especially to see somebody that you know on TV and then know behind the scenes that they were really battling with this health thing. I mean, imagine just your life right now having to schedule 3 or 4 days a week that you have to go sit somewhere for a couple hours just to stay alive.
yeah, I mean, I have a lot of free time right now because I don't have kids or anything, and I can't even fathom scheduling something like that into my daily life.
Yeah, and so many people do it every day, especially people who are waiting for a kidney transplant. Like you have to do it. There's no choice. You can't live without it.
And he's lucky he had the resources to do it with being on the show and having the money and everything, so
Well, he kind of was the show.
yeah.
Like there were other, there were other actors on the show, but like he was the show. You know what I mean? Like it
Mhm.
wouldn't have been the show without him. So they have to kind of, do a little for him.
Alright, let's get on to the next one. Elle Macpherson, the supermodel, has recently come out to say that she's in remission after being diagnosed with breast cancer 7 years ago.
Yeah, so what happened was she had breast cancer, and her doctors, along with multiple other people that she had gotten a consult from, said that they recommended that she get a mastectomy and get localized radiation and get chemotherapy. So she decided she didn't want to do that. She said that she wanted to take like a holistic approach, and she decided she wasn't going to do it. She said her family was not really okay with it. The doctor said that she shouldn't do it, but she did it anyway, and now she's been 7 years, what she says is in remission.
And I do believe she did get a lumpectomy right when she got diagnosed, but they wanted her to go further with it and she just would not do it. And, you know, th- there are doctors saying that this is awesome that this worked for her, but at the same time, they're like these holistic treatments are supposed to complement other cancer treatments that have been proven to work, not be in place of them. So there definitely is hesitance with it. And
I personally don't think it's awesome, and I don't think that she should be saying this stuff because people might listen to her. And I mean, she could do whatever she wants to do, but I wouldn't be if I were her, like I wouldn't say that she's out of the woods yet.
yeah, and that's what
And
some other
breast
experts
cancer
are saying.
especially, it get like breast cancer, like it usually returns within 5 years, but I've seen cases of it just like popping its ugly head 25 years after the fact, like in someone's bones 25 years after they've had a surgery for it. Um, the word remission is a lot of times I still hear people saying this, that like, "Oh, I'm cancer free." And this is how cancer works. Like once she had invasive breast cancer, which means that the tumor cells have had access to your blood vessels and your lymphatics. Once that those tumor cells get into a blood vessel or a lymphatic, they can travel around your entire body. So even if they take the tumor itself out, which is what she had done, they're still circulating tumor cells in the body, right? Which is why they advise you, even though it doesn't look like you have cancer in your lymph nodes or anything, they advise you to get chemotherapy to kill those circulating tumor cells, right? And because she didn't do that, there's a higher risk that they might set up shop at a later date. There's totally the possibility that her immune system recognized those circulating tumor cells and killed them off, and she'll be fine. But the way breast cancer works, and that's why they tell you to do it. Like, they're not going to tell you to put chemo in your body if you don't really need it. They're trying to prevent that from happening. All right, let's get on to freak accidents.
In Mississippi over the weekend, a bus going from Atlanta to Dallas had run off the road just after 1 a.m. local time and ended up running into a ditch. So apparently, a tire failure had caused this bus to lose control, and when the bus crashed, it ejected several people and trapped others where it had landed in the ditch, which made it really difficult for first responders to get everybody out quickly.
Yeah, this is just an unfortunate thing. I think something happened with the tire, but I don't know if it was really anyone's fault. Obviously, if there's negligence involved, you want to mention that, but I don't even know if they know now. It's just terrible. We have another situation where two children were killed, a
Yeah.
brother and sister. Like just and see, I mean, imagine there was probably a family member on the bus with them, maybe or something when it happened. Who knows? But um, yeah, I don't like buses. Like I I was thinking cuz my kids can't get a bus to school and I hate it cuz I have to bring them to school every day and pick them up, which is kind of just a lot. But then when I hear things like this, I'm kind of like, "You know what? I like that I'm in more control of them being belted in a safer car and stuff like that."
Yeah, so as a result, 6 people died, which was including a 16-year-old and her 6-year-old brother, and then 37 people were sent to the hospital with injuries, which is
I thought
insane.
7
Oh,
people
7
died.
people may have died, excuse me. So,
Yes. So I mean, 7 people dying in one accident is a lot.
yeah, that's a lot.
But I guess on buses, school buses have seatbelts now, I think, for the most part, but, like, a regular bus doesn't. If that was just what was it? What was the bus? Like a travel bus, it looked
Yeah,
like?
it was equivalent to what a Greyhound bus was. I think all these buses do have seatbelts, but I just don't think most people use them.
Yeah, I get that.
So this next story is out of Ann Arbor. So a 20-year-old man was sleeping on railroad tracks, which what are you doing? That's totally unsafe.
Is that something people do?
I don't know, but I remember when I was a teenager, we had railroad tracks near our house, and you freaked out on me if I even told you I was like walking near them.
But why would you go near them? I mean, I
I had
understand
to
that,
take artsy pics of my
like,
outfits.
if you're walking on the tracks and there's woods and on either side it's just woods, I understand that people wanna walk on it because it's usually flat and there's rocks and it's easier to walk on it. But, okay, fine, I could understand that, but why would you be like, "Oh, this is where I'm going to take a nap?" I mean, this just doesn't even make any sense. Was the guy high or something?
I don't know. So I
I
mean,
I hope so. That's all I gotta say is I hope there was some kind of
it
reason.
certainly wasn't a good choice, but around 9:30 that night, he was struck by a slow-moving freight train, which thank goodness it was a slow-moving one, not that that one wasn't doing damage, but at least it wasn't going super fast. But then his left hand got entangled in the rear axle of the train, so like the back tire essentially of the train, and they said it was pinned between the wheel axle and weir oh my god.
Here we go, Maria's
Oh my god. It was pinned between the wheel axle and wear gear. I cannot read. I was telling Louis the other day how I can read.
wheel gear.
No, it says
Too
wear
many W
gear. The quote says
No,
wear gear.
yeah, that's not right. It's the axle and the wheel gear. Anyway, j it doesn't matter. His hand got stuck in the train, and they couldn't the first responders were having a hard time getting it out, and they had the flight crew come, and they were like, "We have to be prepared to do a field amputation."
Well, what is that?
Which which is so do you remember there was a case in my book, actually? I don't know if you guys know I have a book called Nicole and Jemmy's Anatomy, but underneath of the chapter of extremity, I have a case of a 20-year-old girl who was in a car accident with her boyfriend, and the car rolled over and her hand and her arm got pinned in the sunroof, and they actually had to amputate her arm at the scene because they couldn't get
Oh
her
my
out.
god.
I know. And the picture in the book is crazy because it shows what her arm looked like when they cut it off, but they had determined at the scene that her arm wasn't going to be viable, and, they were like, "We have to cut it off because we can't get you out," and they have to do that sometimes. It's just so crazy, and luckily, they were able to get the guy's hand out, but, I mean, you're not gonna let somebody stay there and die, right? So you just have to do what you gotta do.
No, and it took 2 hours to get the hand out.
Yeah, and I'm sure they probably ended up amputating it anyway if it was that mangled, but, like, that's always better done at the hospital when, you could be completely knocked out and not have any idea that that's happening,
Oh my
right?
god, yeah.
I just don't know why he was sleeping on a train track.
I will
Guess we'll
never
never know.
understand that, but
Yeah,
I have no idea.
like, this is, like, just don't sleep on the train track, and this probably won't happen to you.
Guys, it's PSL season and not in the way you're thinking at Starbucks or Dunkin'. We're talking about StinkBalm.
I love pumpkin smell, and StinkBalm has it, and for those of you who don't know, StinkBalm is this awesome it comes in this little tiny chapstick container, and you could put it underneath of your nose to avoid smelling anything horrific, so I'm pretty sure some Wells Fargo employees might be using StinkBalm because they're scared to death that they're going to smell another one of their coworkers decomposing at work.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing I was thinking of even if I was smelling anything horrific, I would just like to have it in my desk drawer just, for
Yeah,
any reason,
yeah.
not assuming your coworker's decomposing in the cubicle next to you, but just for any potential smell.
Oh my god.
So you guys can head over to stinkbombodor.com and use code MKD15 for 15% off all products. They have this delicious pumpkin one. They have an awesome coffee one. I personally think I'm going to combine them to make my own version of a little PSL. And they also have awesome ones. Christmas is coming up, so they have an evergreen one that is truly the best scent in the world.
It really is.
Lavender and everything like that. So head over to stinkbalmodorblocker.com for more. This episode is also brought to you by Nicole and Jemmy's Anatomy book.
Since I was just talking about my book, I'm going to show it to you for those watching on YouTube. This book I wrote a couple years ago, and the idea was that people were following me on Instagram and always messaging me about different things that happen in different organ systems. And Instagram was so difficult to just search and find certain cases. So I thought it would be cool if I made a book that went through every single organ system and then all the different kinds of pathologies that could happen in all of the different organ systems. So we had over 100 people contribute to this book, and it's all personal stories. I interviewed every single person and just asked them what their experience was dealing with this pathology, and they also submitted their photos, and there's just some really cool cases like the one I was just talking about of the woman who had to have her arm amputated at the scene of a car accident.
Yeah, so the book is really awesome. It's a perfect little coffee table book. A lot of my friends just have it, laying on their end tables or coffee tables. And then when people come over for parties, they're like, oh, what's this cute little book? And they open it and are totally surprised by what's going on inside. But ultimately, everybody ends up liking it. So if you want more info on that, you could look up Nicole and Jemmy's Anatomy book anywhere that sells books, or you could head over to our website, thedoramater.com/book for more info and to get a little signed book plate by you.
Yes. All right, let's get started with true crime.
At 5:30 a.m. on Monday, 4 people were sleeping on a commuter train in Chicago when a man suddenly went up to them and killed them.
When I first heard this story, I always kind of justify certain things like, okay, did a guy just go on a train and kill 4 people because he had beef with them? Or was it random and this could happen to anybody kind of thing, right? And
Yeah.
this case seems to be like it was random. People were sleeping in different train cars, right? And
Yeah, so police said they were all seated apart from each other between 2 different trains. So the guy just went around and started firing shots at them. 2 of the victims were shot in the head, while the other 2 were shot multiple times. They also don't believe from surveillance footage that he was trying to rob them or anything. They think he just went up to them and killed them.
yeah, like what is the deal with this? And that's what's scary because he had a little gun. He had a 9mm handgun, which they always, they're always on the news just like pushing about the AR and this and that. And it's just like, no, you can kill just as many people with a regular gun too, especially in situations like this where they're unsuspecting or trapped in a train car or something like that. It's just, I don't know. Like what would possess somebody to do that? I don't freaking know.
So at first I was thinking it was people heading to work, but it was Labor Day, so I think most people were off. And then the Chicago Coalition to End Homelessness released a statement saying that violence against homeless people is not random and that more needs to be done to protect them. But the police aren't confirming or denying whether these people were homeless or not. So we're kind of unsure about what
Well,
was
it
going
is
on.
interesting because as of today, they were saying that they only identified 3 of the 4 people. And you have to think like normally when you're on a train, right, you have your purse or a man will have a wallet or something in it or a bag, school bag, whatever. And that could really help investigators when they find a dead body because at least like someone's got an ID or a credit card and they could get a name. You can't assume that that's that person, but it could kind of help you get some leads as to who the person is. Then they'll take the bodies to the medical examiner's office and they'll do fingerprints. But if the person's not in the system, then they have a difficult time. So they do things like they look for tattoos. There's a lot of websites out there from different medical examiners' offices that will post especially tattoos or belongings that were very specific, like a necklace with a name on it or something on this website. So if you're missing a family member or something, you could go on this website and like look to see if they're on there especially by their tattoos. So it is interesting to think maybe that's why it's taking so long to identify this other person, because if it was a homeless person, they might just have clothes on and that's it, and you just don't know who they are.
Yeah, so 3 of the victims died immediately. The 4th was dead at the hospital, and a 30-year-old has been arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder in connection to this case. So I am hopeful that, thank goodness, like, nobody's still on the run for this, and I guess we'll figure out in the next couple weeks, months, what the motive was.
Yeah, it's really weird. I hope we do hear more about it just to see like what was the deal with that because again, just like another scary thing. Gabe always thinks it's weird cuz when he went to travel for school, he was saying that there was just a lot of security on the trains in Europe when he went to Paris and all that stuff and he just thinks that it's not like that here and it's just kind of interesting that it's not.
'Cause they'll have 1 or 2 I don't even I mean, I haven't really been on Philly public transportation in years because it's honestly our city has some of the worst public transportation in the world, just it doesn't go anywhere and it's not well taken care
But they
of.
don't have like metal detectors and
No,
shit,
they
right?
certainly don't have metal detectors, but I don't even think they have like, when I interned in New York one summer, they had at least a couple cops, like, there wasn't one on every train, but one was going in between them pretty regularly. So, I don't know if
That
that's
still wouldn't prevent like, if even if a cop was on the train car, like, if the guy pulled out a gun and just started shooting people, like, the cop might be able to take them down before they kill more people, but, like, it's not preventative, you know what I
I
mean?
mean,
It's
you
weird.
could argue that they should have metal detectors at the train station, but it's just also totally
Like, it's not
it's
plausible,
not
I know, just
plausible with people having to commute in that way. It would
yeah.
jam everything up.
No, I get that.
So it kinda just sucks, but
Yeah.
okay, back in June, police were called because people living in an apartment complex had found a 3-year-old sleeping in the corner of the apartment complex. So they searched the building at first, but were not able to find a mother, and eventually they found her several miles away at a plastic surgery center. And no, she did not work there. She was getting a procedure done.
Yeah, they straight up arrested her, and she had on a robe and, like, dressings around her head. I don't know what the hell she was getting done. I I mean, not even Botox or anything, like, she was getting, like, a legit surgery procedure done on her face and, like, left her kid home.
Yeah, for 6 hours, he was alone. So, she said that her friend was supposed to be watching him, and that friend said that she never asked him to watch the kid. And I'm also like, "Well, why would you leave if there was not a confirmed babysitter in the house? If you have money to get a procedure done, why can't you pay for a babysitter?"
I
I just don't know.
it's so messed up because she probably stuck him in front of a TV or an iPad and thought he was gonna be okay, and then the iPad went dead, and then the kid started wandering. That's what happened.
Yeah, I don't know. This is disgusting. She's been arrested and taken to jail, rightfully so.
I mean, does she look good in her mugshot at least?
Probably not if she's wearing all the dressings and she's swollen.
What a moron.
So, this next story is about a former cop that has been accused of killing a woman and staging her suicide. So, this indictment is saying back in 2021, a 23-year-old woman told this police officer she was pregnant with his child. Apparently, they had a history, well, he had a history of sexually exploiting her since she was a teenager, which is disgusting. And then, allegedly, after she told him about the pregnancy, he then strangled her to death and staged her apartment to look like she died by suicide.
This story really disturbed me this week. So this is how this couple originally met. This guy's a cop, and they have this like junior police academy thing, which they have in my town. They have in a lot of towns where they let teenagers come and they could learn what it's like and to be a cop. Right? They go for like a camp thing, and when this girl was only 15 years old, this cop was 27 years old and met her and started having a relationship with her and started having sex with her and he was married and had kids and was having this whole entire relationship behind his wife's back with this kid and like grooming her basically. And finally, when she got older, she was saying she wanted to have a baby of her own and all this stuff. And she had convinced him to get her pregnant because he was scared he was going to get in trouble for statutory rape. So he was kind of doing it to shut her up and once she did get pregnant, she started being like, "I want you to come baby clothes shopping with me and be involved in the baby's life and everything." And that's when all of a sudden she ended up killing herself.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, this sounds like this Lifetime movie I watched like 15 years ago. It's just such an outrageous plot. And like, what is going on through this guy's brain that he thinks in today's day and age you're going to get away with something like this?
Well, he was lying a lot, and they found all these text messages. Like, he was trying to say their relationship just started and just trying to say all this stuff, and they're like, "No, we could tell that this relationship started when she was underage," and also he was trying to act like he hasn't had sex with her in a while so people wouldn't think that it was his child. Like, you're a moron, dude.
Yeah, and the U.S. attorney in the press conference said, "We allege that the victim survived years of grooming, statutory rape, and then sexual violence, all at the hands of this police officer. And when it became clear that he could no longer control her, he silenced her permanently."
Yeah, and they looked up all of like what was she doing leading up to this? She didn't have any suicidal ideation. Even up to hours before she died, she was booking a photographer for her newborn. She was buying newborn clothes and doing laundry at the time that she killed
So
herself. Supposedly kills her.
will he get charged with 2 deaths then if she's confirmed pregnant?
I think it depends on number 1, how far along she is, and number 2, what state that they're in. Because I think
Yeah.
every state, it varies as if they decide, one or the other. But yeah, I mean, did it say where this happened?
I
I
didn't
don't
write it
remember.
down, but
But, yeah, like, I I I hope so. I mean, how gross, right? Like,
yeah.
again, imagine being this guy's wife.
Well, yeah, and it circles back to my theory, like, if you're having an affair, somebody doesn't have to die because of it. Just, like, you need to deal with the consequences of it because so, it's like you're either gonna get
Well,
in
it was more
trouble.
than a fair. That's the thing. Like, it seemed like he was scared because, ultimately, like, it all woulda came out how they met and everything like that, and, like, he didn't wanna get in trouble for having sex with a minor, which he
But
was.
now he's going to jail for murder, so it's like, what's worse?
I don't know. I think it's gross that he staged it. Like, you kind of ruined this girl's life. Not kind of. You ruined this girl's life. And then you're going to end it by like making it look like she killed herself. She's got family and stuff and just like just like staging a suicide. Like, how gross is
Yeah,
that?
it is pretty disgusting. This next story happened not that far from us, which is really disturbing. So, this 42-year-old woman returned home from work one day. Before going into her house, somebody approached her and threw a cup of acid on her.
Yeah, sulfuric acid, it's very caustic, and what happens when you get acid thrown on you is that really it burns your skin like a flame would burn it, except it just doesn't stop until you get the acid off of your body. And sometimes people are so injured that they can't get to a source to even clean it off right away, or it doesn't even happen until they get to the hospital. And the chemical eats through the skin, the soft tissue, the muscle. It could go all the way down into the bone. So this woman was burned over 35% of her body. It's so terrible when you hear things like this.
Yeah, so then police start investigating what they believed at first was a random attack, but then they found that this GPS tracking device was placed under her car. So in their investigation, they found the device had been purchased by a woman named Betty Jo Lane and it was bought at a spy shop. What is a spy shop?
I don't know. Let's just put this out there that these are like the dumbest criminals ever.
Yeah, of
Because
course.
wait till you hear the rest of the story. So this lady purchased a GPS tracking device and put it on the woman that got doused in acid's car.
Wait, but she activated the device on July 19th and didn't plant it till July 23rd. So the GPS device was tracking this lady in the
What
couple
a
days.
fucking moron.
Yeah.
What? Seriously, like, you are the dumbest person ever.
She actually stayed at a hotel, like, really close to my house, so, like, that's not comforting at all. So, yeah, this GPS device, it was tracking her going to all these different hotels and basically her entire journey until she actually planted it on the victim's car on July 23rd, and then 3 days after that, the attack happened. So, overall, they found this woman and another guy named Jamar McNeil had been hired by the victim's ex-boyfriend. So they all lived in Florida and they came up to do this, and now they're gonna have to be extradited here for the trial.
Wha
Idiots.
They gave the police, like, an entire story. Like, thanks. That was very easy, you idiots. Jesus. So, I mean, it really sucks that this happened to this lady, and she might not ever fully recover. I mean, she has, it looks like it's on her face, which is terrible. Just risk of infection and everything like that. Like, she's going to have a long road ahead of her. I believe she was a nurse. She probably can never work again, like doing what she was doing, at least
Yeah.
for a long time.
I mean, she had to be airlifted to the burn center, and then she's been in there for over a month since this happened.
Yeah, I
So
mean, of course she is. Yeah, it's terrible, and like, why? Because these like, I guess the guy paid these people like $40,000 or something to do this.
they're idiots. So all three have been charged with first-degree conspiracy to commit murder, criminal attempt, second-degree aggravated assault, possession of a weapon, unlawful purpose, and stalking. So
Good.
good
I was
one.
like, they should get them for the charge of just, sticking a GPS tracking device under somebody's car. That's so scary.
Yeah, it really is.
All right, let's get on to medical news.
In West Palm Beach, this OBGYN had been under fire for several botched circumcisions and the several deaths of his patients.
Yeah, and the Florida board took his license away, apparently, and he was still performing surgery, which I don't even understand how that's possible.
Okay, so apparently once the board votes to revoke your license, there's this weird lapse in time where, let's say on a Monday, they take the license away. It's not officially in place until you get this official paperwork like 2 weeks later. So he was performing this circumcision we're going to talk about later on in this time period in between them deciding they were going to revoke it and him getting the paperwork legally
Okay, so
revoking it.
so if I'm this person, right, that's suing
Yes.
because of this situation, I'm suing them too, because that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's their fault, because they should have a system in place. Like, I'm sorry, but that's possible, right?
Yeah.
It's just their problem. They should have a system in place where whatever hospital these people are performing at or medical facilities are alerted right away that they are no longer to be doing
And
it.
you really shouldn't even let them so what happened was in between this time frame he still continued to practice and then he had this one couple meet him in his office but pay him cash. Like what does paying him cash matter? They really should lock the office up and not let them go in it. Don't you think?
But yeah, I don't know. I guess you can't do that though, because a person might own a building or rent it. You can't just like tell people they can't go to their building.
I get that.
And
but-
that's, I guess that's what happened. So he was performing on his own.
Yeah, he was performing anyway because nobody was doing anything about it, and he certainly didn't tell his patients that they had voted to revoke his license.
Okay, so then what I just said doesn't really matter, because he could have just done this anyway. He wasn't like doing this at a hospital. But what is concerning to me, I guess, in 2024, why would a doctor ever be telling a patient that they would do a procedure for cash in an office? Like, why wouldn't anybody think that that was skeptical?
I really don't know. I really just don't know, but you don't know what if he was doing that before. Like you just don't know what was going on leading up to this and how familiar they were with him and maybe that they were maybe in a rush to get something. I don't know. You have to look at all the circumstances leading up to this specific procedure. But basically this couple brought their son in and he totally botched the circumcision and severed the child's penis.
Yeah, so while he was doing the circumcision, I guess the mom didn't want to sit in the room and watch it, but the dad sat there and watched it and thought that the kid was bleeding a lot, and the guy just kept saying like, "No, this is normal, whatever." They sent the baby home with the parents and were like, "Give the kid Tylenol and it'll stop bleeding eventually." The next morning, the baby was still bleeding, so they brought the baby to the emergency room. The emergency room was like, kind of, we don't really know what we're looking at here. Let's go to a pediatric urologist specialist to check this out because it doesn't look right. And the pediatric urologist was first talking to the parents and just saying like, "Hey, just to let you know, there's complications with this and the bleeding and it's all normal." And then he took off the diaper and was like, "Goo!"
Yeah.
He didn't know what he was looking at. And he was like, "Oh my God, there's a serious problem here." And that's when they realized that the baby's urethra, or the tube that brings urine out of the penis, was severed. And he couldn't even tell the full extent of it because it was bleeding so much. So the parents let it, finally that heal up and scab over. And then when they looked at it, they said that 50% of the penis was cut off.
It's just ridiculous. So then they this happened a couple years ago. So then they sued him. And then so last week after the trial, jurors had awarded the parents $100 million settlement, which was double what they were even asking for because of how horrific this case was. And this douchebag doctor didn't even show up. He didn't even have legal representation at all. He just acted as if it wasn't happening.
But like he's going to get fined and not get in any trouble for this.
So this is where I learned about the license thing because the family wants them to press criminal charges against him for practicing without a license, but they're saying technically his license had not been revoked yet. They had voted to revoke it, but it had not legally been revoked yet. So he technically wasn't doing anything illegal, which is
Wow.
bullshit. And they were like, the system needs to change, which I agree.
Well, I don't understand what like he's a trained surgeon. Why is he botching so many things like this? Like
So
they paid $250 for it. He needed $250 that bad. He was like rushing through it or something. Like I don't understand.
there seems like there was negligence. So this guy was practicing for 33 years. This article said that the average OBGYN faces about 2 to 3 lawsuits within their career. This guy had 9, which is about 3 times what a normal OBGYN faces. Also, they talked about another case where he was delivering a baby and then the mother delivering the baby had died and that family had sued him and won a bunch of money. He hasn't paid them yet. So I don't think this family, even though they were awarded $100 million, is ever going to see $1 of that because he still owes these other patients that sued him all this money before
Yeah.
them.
And I guess it's sad because it was all occurring in his office, so it's not like they could sue the hospital that he was working for. Because that's what I thought at first, that this was like a case that was being done at a hospital, and thinking like, why was that hospital letting this doctor there?
No.
But now it makes sense, and it's just.
I'm under the assumption this was a private practice, so it's
I mean, listen, like I'm very vocal about this that I'm anti-circumcision. I think that this whole entire thing didn't even need to happen because I don't even think a circumcision needs to happen. Like unless it's for medical purposes, but like this is just a weird American thing that goes on. And
it's not just a weird American thing, it's a religious thing in some cultures too. So like you have to respect people that want to stay true to their religion and everything.
I respect it. I just don't think just because I respect the religion doesn't mean that I agree with it. I just think it's like you're born with it. So why are you removing it? Like I don't know. It's just like setting up for another problem for that doesn't need to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So another doctor in Florida is also under fire after removing the wrong organ during a procedure.
I read this story like 500 times. I don't understand how this happened. I can't. Like, this guy's a general surgeon, okay? So you have to go through a certain level of like medical school, residency, surgery, fellowship, all of this stuff. How on earth do you not? It's not like, okay, this person had 2 legs and one of the legs, the wrong leg got amputated, right? Because it's like a leg and a leg. Okay,
Still
fine.
unacceptable.
It would
but
still it's still completely unacceptable, but like 2 legs have the same exact anatomy except it's kind of like mirror image on each side, right? How on earth are you going to do surgery on a patient that presents with splenomegaly, so that's an enlarged spleen? Go in and by the way, in every single person's anatomy, unless you were born with like a condition called situs inversus, which is when your organs are on the opposite sides of your body, which happens in barely anyone ever, right? So on every single human being, your spleen is on the same side of your body as your heart. So how and your liver is on the completely opposite side of your body. How the hell do you take out the wrong organ and take out the liver instead of the spleen?
Yeah, so this is what happened. A 70-year-old man was on vacation with his family. He started having pain in the stomach area, so doctors determined it was his spleen and that he needed this immediate surgery. So during the procedure, the surgeon was supposed to take out the spleen and then took the liver out instead, which is so ridiculous.
Now he died right away, I'm assuming.
He did die.
Okay, because this is just like the craziest shit ever to me. So a spleen only has the splenic artery going into it. It's just like one blood vessel and one vein going in and out of it, right? The liver has the normal circulation going through it as well as the portal circulation going through it. So you would have to just cut off multiple other blood vessels just to get it out. So he just hacked it out.
Wait,
and that's why the guy bled out.
did you see what he said?
This can't be real.
Did you see what he
It can't be real.
Did you see what he said? He told the family that it had the spleen went. So they didn't discover till after the patient died what happened. So before they discovered what happened, he seriously told the family that it was severely diseased and had enlarged to 4 times its normal size, even migrating to the other side of the body.
Listen, that's possible. I've seen that. Okay, like when you get a really big spleen, you can get a big spleen for all sorts of reasons. Like you remember like when we were younger and someone gets mono and your spleen gets big and then like you have to be careful because if you're a sports player, it can rupture. Like when the spleen gets really big, you need to take it out because even like an old person, if they have a big spleen and they fall, the thing could just like split in half and cause the person to bleed to death. So they have to take it out. You could get it for tumors, blood disorders, all sorts of different things. But and it could and you also could get it from portal hypertension if you have like cirrhosis in your liver, the blood could back up and make the spleen get really big. We like when we used to do autopsies and find them all the time, I used to call it like a walrus spleen because it looked like a walrus, like it because it got so big that it would squeeze underneath the ribs, which would put like little like lines in it. And it just looked like and it's kind of like gray. It just looked like a big beached walrus. I don't know how to explain it, but so it is normally supposed to be on the left side of the body, but it could get so big that it like spreads over the line into the right side. But there's always a clear distinction that like that one's on this side of the body. Like you could see that it's starting on the left side and kind of spreading over to the right versus like originating on the right side. You could just tell. It just it sounds like it's a fake story because that's how crazy this is to me.
Sorry for this dumb question also, but aren't some organs like different colors? Like aren't livers tend to be like a darker purple color? What color is a spleen?
It depends. And I don't know they don't really ever say what the pathology was, but yeah, like a person like me that does autopsies and seen hundreds and hundreds of people's organs, you could definitely like throw them all in a bin and I would be like, this one, I don't even need to look at it in the body. Like I could be like, this is this is this, like, and a surgeon should definitely be able to do that too, right? I don't know, like if you even said at autopsy, hey, take out this person's spleen and I handed you the liver, you'd be like, you're a moron. And that's like the person's dead and I'm not even trying to keep the person alive. Like what? I don't understand how this happened.
I don't know, but it's
very so outrageous. It is. And there has to be, it's not like this dude was like Mr. Perfect Surgeon and then all of a sudden did this big mistake. It's not possible. Like there's probably so many other people that have had issues with this dude.
Oh, it'll come out, especially with this one.
I'm like kind of jealous of the people that did this autopsy actually, because so this guy dies during surgery. And if a patient dies during surgery, they'll call the medical examiner and say like, hey, this person died during procedure. And usually the medical examiner will be like, all right, we need to check this out just to make sure that something like this didn't happen. Some major like negligent malpractice case,
yeah,
right?
And they don't want somebody working at the hospital also covering it up, I'm sure too. So
exactly. So they do the autopsy, and I can't even imagine the person that was eviscerating this person and was just like, oh my God, their spleen is still here. After like I can't imagine the shock of doing that autopsy. So
all right,
makes me a little jealous, honestly. They're like my favorite kinds. Okay.
All right, our next story. In Beirut, a 38-year-old man went to the doctor after he was facing redness, swelling, and scabbing on his penis for a few days, and he also had severe diarrhea and vomiting. So they swabbed his penis to see what the infection was, and what was it?
You don't want to try to pronounce this?
No way am I even
It's not even hard. It's Bacillus cereus.
All right.
Anyway, it's a certain kind of bacteria that is usually found in rice, especially that's one of the ones that you would think if you had rice, right, and you left it on the counter like overnight, it's like totally safe to eat, but that's like one of the weird bacterias that could grow in rice if you leave it out for too long. But they're saying that this particular case is very interesting because that bacteria causes food poisoning. So how are they culturing it from an infection site in the penis? And when they did some further investigation, they found out that right before he got this food poisoning, he had vigorous sex, which would have like kind of sloughed the skin off of the penis, right? Which leaves the skin is, we were talking the other day about how the skin is an organ and how it's your barrier, it's a protection. Well, when you take off those layers of the barrier, then all of a sudden bacteria has an easier way to get into your body. And this is really nasty, but like when this guy had this infection and he was having like this diarrhea come out of his butt and his penis like hanging in the toilet at the same time, that bacteria got into these open wounds on his penis, and that's what caused it to start growing in his penis.
The body is so crazy, like the way it handles.
It's so gross. The craziest part of this story to me is that they're saying that this is the first known case of like having food poisoning in the penis, and I just like don't buy it. Because like a penis is hanging like close to a butt where there's diarrhea. Like it's had to happen before.
Well, maybe this is just the first documented one. There's no way this
Yeah.
is the first ever case.
No. Absolutely
Or
not.
the first case published in a medical journal. Like
Yeah,
there's no
exactly.
way.
Like I'm like, there's no way. I don't believe it. I mean, so when men have sex, typically, if you were talking about like a male versus a female having sex, women get injured way more because like their vag could rip open. You know what I mean? Like it's
Mhm.
like you're dry, you rip the inside a little bit. Like there's always like a soreness and a redness and open wounds after sex with like it's just more increased with a female versus a male, right? So it definitely like wouldn't be as common. And also like a man's penis is way further away from their anus than like a vagina is.
Yeah.
So obviously like this could happen more often, but like it's not impossible.
No.
I don't think so anyway.
Okay, according to new research from USC, new technology is available to detect missing bacteria in infections.
This is really cool. So, when you get surgery, one of the biggest risks that come with the surgery is that you can get an infection with a surgery. And a lot of times it's because obviously doctors can't see bacteria with their eyes because it's microscopic. So, they just have to use all the techniques that they know and clean the wounds out as good as possible before suturing someone up. And that could potentially lead to infections. So this new technology that they developed is using a light that can detect bacteria that the human eye can't detect. So if they use this light on a wound they're getting ready to suture up, or even a wound that's not healing and they could see the bacteria there, then they know they can like clean it out better. And this could possibly like really be life-changing when it comes to healing from a surgery.
Yeah, it's super cool. I think this is going to be a really awesome advancement in technology, and I hope they start using it more.
Yeah, I do too, because, it's not just getting a localized infection that's the problem with a wound. It's more of like how the biggest problem is that it could spread into your bloodstream and then it could give you sepsis, and that's life threatening. So it could really be life changing. I'm really curious to see how it works. It looks really cool.
Yeah, it does.
All right, let's get into other death news.
So, a quote near death expert has come out to say that death may be reversible.
I like his theory. He's just kind of like, if I have a heart attack, like, why do I have to die right now? I don't want to die, right? And he's using all these examples, and he kind of has a point. There's been a lot of studies done that say that people who have had near death experiences still claim that they have memories that after they had, let's say, cardiac arrest or something like that. And it is true. Like they could document that because they know what time a person had cardiac arrest. And if they're saying things that happened afterwards, like, and they were unconscious, like, how would they know otherwise? Right. So it's really cool, and they did a study which is super gruesome, but they amputated the heads off of pigs and saw that they were having brain activity up to 14 hours after they were beheaded. So this doctor seems to think that like your brain is still kind of like developing thoughts as it's not technically on anymore. Which listen, like I've always thought about this because sometimes I've done autopsies on people that are like very freshly dead within an hour, and it skeeves me out, number 1 cuz they're warm, and I just think that that's weird because whenever I do an autopsy I just want the person to be cold. But on top of that, I always would think like what if it's still not off all the way yet? Like I didn't even know about any of this research. I was just thinking about that. Like it just disturbed me a little bit. I don't know. But it's interesting that this is actually a real thing. And he's saying when there's things out there like something called ECMO, which is what it pumps your heart and makes your lungs work when yours can't. And there's also different what he calls a CPR cocktail, which consists of multiple drugs that can keep you kind of going. Like, why not? Why do you have to die? I don't know. It's very iffy because when we're trying to keep a bunch of people alive that need to die, then like the world's going to get overpopulated really fast.
Well, I was thinking that, and also like for a normal, good, law-abiding citizen that might have an incident, it's cool to revive them. But what if, we take out an evil person and then somebody is able to revive them? I don't really like that that's a possibility because you just have to think that everything made for good at some point will also be used for evil. So,
Oh, yeah, it will. It's just, I mean, with all of these different studies, it's the same thing I think about when you could pick the color of your kid's eyes and what color hair they're going to have and all this stuff. I think it's cool from a scientific perspective that people can manipulate things in order to go against nature, but I don't think that they should. Just because this is like the Jurassic Park line is just like forever genius, just because you can doesn't mean you should kind of thing. So, it is interesting though. I like this article just bringing up these points.
yeah. Okay, on to questions of the day. Every Friday at the Mother Knows Death Instagram account, we put a story up where you guys can ask us whatever questions you want. First, how long does it take to receive results from a biopsy at the hospital?
So that depends because you could take a biopsy from any different organ, body site, anything like that, and they're treated differently according to what it is. So let's say you just go and get a routine colonoscopy. Those ones usually could take the longest sometimes if you're just not really looking for anything that's super stat because all of the ones that are priority would obviously be done before that. But biopsies still usually get done pretty fast in most labs. Um, so if you just want to get the biopsy done, so it will get to the lab and then it goes on the machine overnight. And then when it comes out the next day, sometimes a doctor could look at it the next day. You could get it in as quick as 24 hours. Oftentimes, if you do something where you need to look at it right away, when were we talking about this? I feel like we were talking about this with someone having a drug reaction. Were we talking about that here or in a gross room post?
Probably.
It was a gross room post actually that I wrote the other day. We were talking. So if a person is suspected to be having a drug reaction to a medication, they will do a biopsy of the skin and they will send it to us stat, and then we could have it done like really, really fast because they need the time is of the essence with those particular ones. But for a routine like colonoscopy biopsy, you could get it anywhere from like 24 hours. I mean, technically they could do it that fast, but sometimes it takes days depending on where it goes. And then in other cases too, like if they do a GI biopsy and they're looking for H. pylori, which is a bacteria that is known to cause stomach ulcers and could lead to stomach cancer as well. That one gets a special stain. So sometimes when anything gets a special stain, that could like add a day on. And then if they do a biopsy and it looks like it has cancer there, they'll do other stains, immunohistochemistry on it to see if like where the tumor's coming from. That could make it take a couple more days too. So it just, sorry, I can't really give you a clear answer. Like that's not happening here. Um, It depends what body site it is. It depends what hospital it goes to, and it depends if it needs stains or not. That's your answer.
Okay, next. What happens with an autopsy if the person has donated their organs?
Oh, that's a good question. So, if the person's donating like their heart, I don't know if you guys know this, but when you're donating like major organs, they need to be fresh off of a person that's dead, legally dead, but still not dead. So they're hooked up to machines still and they're still alive, but they've been declared dead. So they take those organs from people right away because they're going to transplant them in somebody else. They need to be like hot off the press, right? So we don't do the autopsy until after that's done. Now, there's been times where, which I'll never forget, one time I had an autopsy that was a person that had a suspected pulmonary embolism, or they were looking for something in the heart there, and then they wanted to send the heart they were doing it for an organ transplant. I don't even know in that case that they would determine that that heart would even be like viable, but I don't know if they were going to use it for research or whatever, but they took the heart out before we got the body. That's all I want to say. Well, how am I supposed to look for anything anatomic that's going on in that region when they've already removed it? So
Yeah.
there's limitations to the autopsy, but let's say I don't even know what an example would be. Usually when the person is an organ donor, we rarely would have gotten the autopsy on them. We do get people that donate skin and bones get that for an autopsy a lot. So sometimes, you'll flip over a patient that's had donated their skin and they have no skin on their back when we flip them over to look at their back. Or they donated their bones and they have like PVC pipes stuck in their legs now in the place where their bones were. And they're it kind of sucks for autopsy because they're almost like a rag doll. It's like very hard to move their body because they don't have these like firm bones in there that they used to have. And then other times like donating corneas and stuff like that could be done later, like after we do the autopsy.
Interesting. All right, last. Are you guys really into Halloween?
Yeah, like yes and no, I guess. I feel like I was way more into it when I was younger.
Yeah, personally, I'm not really that into it. I do very minimal decorations, but that's mostly because I also find it kind of hard to decorate. I equate my interior design to a Boca Raton retirement home in my living room. So, my living room is very bright yellow and pink and blue, and there's not a
You
lot
need
of
to get those
Halloween stuff.
flamingos that are like skeletons.
Maybe. I don't know, and something about those I just don't like. I don't know, I'm not super into the Halloween. Actually, Target, the dollar section this year had disco ball spiders and pumpkins and stuff, and I'm like, "Wow, I could actually match my home decor."
We could probably get those pink ones and like paint our own skull. I know because the black is like harsh in your house. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
But we could probably get the pink ones and like paint a skeleton on it, and that would probably look cute. Like you could make your own thing,
Yeah, I do decorate, but I'm not into the holiday itself. I don't like dressing up because the couple times a year I go to parties, I feel like I always, like, overdress or overdo it, and not a lot of other people do,
I
and
like the dressing part of it. I feel especially with the kids, like, I go over and above and extra with everything with their costumes. And decorating, like, I would, but we don't have a ton of space in our house for all like, Gabe has already yelled at me and said, like, "We need to reduce all of these yellow bins that we have with all the decorations in it." He's like, "There's no reason that we need this much storage for decorations." But like, Christmas and Halloween are a lot of decorations, what could I say?
I think when I have kids, I'll be more into it because it's like you're dressing them up, you take them out, it's fun. Like, the girls are older now, so I don't like, they're teenagers, so, like, I'm over them, but no, when they were
They are not too
no.
they're 9 and
I
11, they are nowhere near
I'm
teenagers.
joking. No, when they were, like, really little, though, and, like, we weren't used to having, like, toddlers around because there was such an age gap between, like, me and them, it was really fun dressing up their, like, chunky little bodies and stuff, and then they
Yeah.
always had, like, matching outfits, and we did funny makeup. Like, I always look at the picture of the year that they were the Cheshire Cat and the Queen of Hearts. I think it's, like
Oh, and Lulu, like, cried and all the makeup was around her face and she looked insane.
yeah, it was funny, but No, I'm a crazy Christmas person.
And
November 1st is Christmas.
Yeah. I think we're more Christmas people, but I don't know, like, our town is insane. My town that I live in for Halloween, like, absolutely insane. The whole entire town gets so into it, so it's like you almost don't even have a choice, like, you have to unless you have to, like, really go on vacation and leave the town if you don't wanna participate in it
Well, that's
because it's
another
that
thing.
insane.
You guys have this, like, awesome community of trick-or-treaters. Literally 2 kids came to my house last year. It's not even
Yeah.
fun to sit outside and hand it out because there's no children.
Yeah. Well, and because every single person in New Jersey comes to my town, I think. That's where we've gotten with this. How many candy we had? Like 5,000 pieces of candy we gave out in, like, an
An
hour or
hour,
so. It
and we
was
were
ridiculous.
monitoring it too. It's not like they were
Yeah.
just going out willy-nilly, but I don't know. That
Yeah, I've been to like, it's all right, it's September, and our town's already started decorating, by the way, which is pissing Gabe off when we drive around. He's just like, "Oh," he's like, "It's September 3rd or whatever," and I'm like, "No, dude. It no."
I
Like, it
do
happens.
I do
We do
love
it
the
early
fall.
with Christmas too, though.
I'm really early with Christmas. I actually scaled back because I used to, like, November 1st start putting stuff out, but then I I don't know, I'm still pretty early with it. I tend to decorate the weekend before Thanksgiving because I host Thanksgiving, so I want everybody to see my decorations, and then that's still a little early too, so I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't care. I don't care about that. I don't know what I'm gonna do for Halloween because last year we did a lot, and now I'm just like, I have to really get rid of stuff. Like, we just don't have anywhere to put this stuff, so.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Don't forget to submit your shocking story to stories@motherknowsdeath.com. We also still have the giant microbes contest going on for another week. So, in order to win one of the giant microbes, you have to go to Apple, leave us a written review, screenshot it, and also email that to stories@motherknowsdeath.com. That contest will be going on until September the 13th, and then we will announce winners the following week.
Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day, and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.